Hello and welcome to Galactic. My name is Temko and today we are taking a look at a game called SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies 2. As expected, it is the sequel to the smashing hit of SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies by developer MinMax Games. And from the proceeds of SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies, they decided to make a direct sequel in the form of SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies 2. Is it any good? Well, we're going to take a look, but first we're going to take a look at options, settings, and all that good stuff. If you are not familiar with SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies, hang on, we'll be talking a little bit about that in the initial part of the review, so you will not be lost. But before we do all of that, we're going to take a look at the technical things of the game. So let's dive in. As always, if you do not want to hear and see me talk about technical options, you can press the annotation that is floating somewhere around on your screen right about now. For the rest of us, let's go ahead and dive into some options. The game has a pretty fleshed out options menu. From the various gameplay options for mouse sensitivity, as well as displaying damage and distance numbers, you can customize your gameplay experience a little bit. The various weapon configurations and how you want to configure the various weapons based on the hotkeys are a very interesting addition to the options menu. Based on your gameplay and your preferences in regards to shipbuilding, you can configure the variety of weapons such as cannons, pulsars, miniguns, lasers, SRMs, missiles, torpedoes, etc. all under 1, 2, or 3 keys. And based on the preset you pick for your weapon loadout, different weapons will fire. This is pretty good if you have like a shield loadout and a hull loadout, etc. You can just switch between the various hotkeys and that will be that. Pretty useful. You do have a controller reference. The game plays fine with mouse and keyboard. And you can rebind all the various keys for mouse and keyboard. Nothing to complain about there at all. Graphically, the game looks okay. It's not a stunning game from the get-go. It has an interesting art style. It has an interesting graphical style. It has an interesting aesthetic. But it's not going to win points in the crisis department of fidelity. Doesn't look bad, but to call it a beautiful game would be a stretch. It looks cool. It looks psychedelic. It looks like the name calls it. It's SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies, and that is what it conveys. You do have a bunch of options all the way up to UI scale. FOV sadly only up to 75, but it is in third person, so that is okay. It's not bad. I would have liked to see it go higher nonetheless. Various things like VSync, etc. The game is not locked to 60 FPS, so that is a good thing. And everything else you can expect. I've turned off a combat grid because I don't like the look of it, but you can turn that on and you'll see a little bit of a grid on the map when playing. And then lastly we have display, which is full screen on or off, as well as a variety of resolution options. All the game has a pretty decent options menu. There's nothing really glaring missing from here. Yes, as always, I would have liked to see a bigger FOV slider going up to 90 or 100, but as it's a third person game, you don't really need that. And I would have also liked to see a colorblind mode, but the game is so bloody colorful. I do understand the difficulties with that in regards to the game. So let's dive in, shall we? The game has a multiplayer part that is not yet implemented. I'm not sure how that will be. The game is coming into early access, so there is going to be quite a bit of development left on the game, and there is a couple of placeholders in the game, like things like voice acting and so forth, that really do display this game is not fully finished. But what is finished is the core gameplay loop, which is what we are going to review. So let's go ahead and dive into single player. And there's two ways to play single player. You can either do a campaign mode, which is sort of a tutorial. The developer says this will last you about 12 hours, and from my experiences this sounds about right. I am now about 8 hours in and I'm halfway through the campaign mode. Thankfully, the developers have provided the press with several save files so we can experience the full range of the game. So I've been playing around with early and late game stuff as well, just to get a feel for how the various modules and ships and shipbuilding aspects fit together into the late game. I do suggest starting with a campaign because it does introduce a couple of new mechanics, even if you are familiar with SPAZ 1. But that's really up to you. You can just go with the new sandbox, and a new sandbox lets you create factions, faction sizes, faction strengths, the amount of bandits, the amount of perks you can get before zombies appear, the amount of strength the alpha zombies have. You can customize this and make it as easy and as hard as you like it to be, which is pretty cool. I do like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into a pre-existing game that's about 5 hours in, and I'll talk a little bit about the gameplay, the various things that are new, that they aren't new, that are familiar to most of you, and see where the game stands going into its early access period. So let's get into it, shall we? Welcome to SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies. This is your world map. It is very, very colorful, and that is a good thing. So when you start SPAZ, Pirates and Zombies 2, it throws you in as a sort of sequel to Space Pirates and Zombies 1. And one of the things I did get confused about personally is where the story really left off and where it started. The characters you're familiar with are still here. They just assume you know what you're talking about already, and they just go on ahead with what the story is. The story does progress in terms of characters, in terms of ideas from Space Pirates and Zombies 1, but I've not had any issues with picking it up and just playing straight on from Space Pirates and Zombies 2. So the age-old question of whether or not you should play the first game first and then the sequel, the answer is not really. It's a sandbox game. That is not necessary. It's not a cohesive narrative experience. You might just miss out on a few characters here and there, or a few references here and there. Not a big deal. I would go for the newer title because it has so many improvements on the core tech and the core gameplay, even with the base idea being the same. So I do suggest just playing Space Pirates and Zombies 2 if you are considering picking up either one of those. Your ship has levels, and one of the main things with Space Pirates and Zombies 2 is building your ship. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that at once. If we head over in the Assemble Ship department, it's going to start assembling your ship. This is my ship. It has a bunch of modules on it. It has a bunch of guns on it. And I've decided to go for a Omni Cannon loadout. So I have 3 Omni Cannons here that shoot projectiles. And that's all they really do. They shoot a bunch of projectiles. And you can reassemble and disassemble your ship as you deem fit. Now there are some criteria on the ship. For example, the ship level and the maximum allowed cores on your ship do limit how fast you can grow your ship. Also, rarer modules, higher end modules, and more expensive modules obviously require more resources to purchase, so they are later game items. Certain modules also require not 1 but 2 slots. And you also have to unlock the ability to mount items off 2 slots on your ship. You have sort of a tractor beam you can pull in stuff with. You can do that in this builder mode, but you can also do that during combat. So for example, if you're in combat and somebody blows off one of your modules, which is a module of your ship, you can just grab your tractor ray if it's not destroyed, it's just blown off, and attach it straight back on and continue using it should it not be destroyed and unusable for the duration of that combat. You can also disassemble these cores obviously and reassemble them as you deem fit, so you can do whatever you wish with a variety of cores. These cores provide hardpoints to mount your guns on, and they also provide things like hull, armor, and so on and so forth. So these are pretty important, and the configuration you put them in is also pretty damn important because it allows various guns to be mounted on them. For example, these guns are all right mounted guns, so these cannot be mounted on the left side, and so on and so forth. So you just have to kind of mount these guns on it. Now each module obviously has a certain threshold. Some modules are very high end and cost a lot of money, but they also do better, so they're straight up upgrades. This doesn't mean that there's no side grades, as I like to call them. There's guns that you just have to pick and choose which you prefer. Each gun has a type of damage it does. It has a range, it has a radius, it also has energy capacity that will drain your battery before you have to recharge. Some guns are designed to shoot down shields, some guns are designed to take out hull, and some guns, like missiles mostly, are designed to take out health. So you have to mix and match the variety of these guns to get the best result. Obviously, with the various loadouts you use and the various hotkeys to switching loadouts, you can decide what guns to fire and at what target at any time. So there's a lot of planning going into building your ship, and when in combat, it is most important to execute that build to the best of your ability. Different ships and different enemies are going to have different answers for you, and you have to react to certain things. Sometimes you just come across a ship that you can't beat, even though technically you should be able to beat that ship. It has a ship build that your ship is just not designed for. Maybe you have very weak shield penetrating abilities and that ship has a ton of shielding and you just can't penetrate. Maybe that ship just stays out of range because you're too slow and it uses long range missiles to hit you. That is a possibility, and you have to think ahead of what kind of ships you will be facing, what kind of guns you will be facing, and build your ship accordingly to do what you wish them to do. You can disassemble your ship, reassemble your ship, get new cores, store cores in your starbase once you unlock that ability, and just play as you deem fit. It's a pretty interesting system. It is what you were expecting from SPAZ originally. This is nothing new or nothing really different. They just fine-tuned a couple of things and added a bunch more guns. That is really it. Does it work? Yes, it works. Don't fix what isn't broken is the adage you've chosen here, and that is a good thing. Now, as you level up, you unlock more cores, you can buy better parts, you can buy bigger parts that do different things. All of that is pretty important. impressive. The way you get these parts, you can also loot them in combat, and trade for them, and so on and so forth. All of that pretty good and straightforward. But how do you use them? Well, if we head back to the star map, there's a variety of things you have to look at when you are playing the game. Obviously, you have a bunch of maps you can travel over. And once you start the game, you have to join a faction. Not at the start, but after a couple of minutes of gameplay, you will be asked to join a faction. You have to meet the criteria of that faction. Now, I'm part of the blue faction, and they are all about, well, nothing really. It doesn't really matter. It's just a color on the map. You belong to them, and the goal is to build their empire further and further. And you can repair your ship for free in their star bases, and so on and so forth. And obviously, once you build your star base, you can start raiding other star base sectors, and you can start declaring wars on other factions, trying to get their resources. All of that pretty straightforward. You level up, you get better, and you start destroying your opponents. How do you do that though? How do you do combat? Well, we're gonna go ahead and look for a bit of combat here. Let's go ahead and look up this little bandit hive. Once you travel your ship, you'll be using the res resource. You can get this res resource by, as you guessed it, picking up res or fighting. You get this by either destroying enemies, or in space there's these locations that have res, and you can use that res as well. You can also sell res and buy res, though it is pretty expensive. So res is your fuel in essence. You also have scrap, which is the currency in the game. You also get scrap by either mining for it in debris belts or by combat and killing opponents. The last resource is crew, and again you can get crew from cloning facilities in space, much like res, much like scrap. And crew is used to repair your ship and to maintain it during flight. So you're gonna sort of have to balance out how much crew you have. Obviously, the more crew you have, the more scrap you have, the heavier your ship is, the more full your cargo hold is, the slower your ship travels, the more res it burns. So it's always a bit of a balance on how much you have on you, how much you need to carry extra in case you get in the scrap, and how far away the next safe haven is for you to go ahead and repair, replenish, or restock. And there's two types of combat as well. There's combat against stations, which is what I'm going to show you just now, and there is combat against other ships. Now, all of these types of combat are done by starting a timer on the map. This timer fills a circle, and once that circle is full, combat starts. During this time, other ships on the map can join in on the combat on either side. So if you're fighting a rival faction and there's a lot of his allies in the neighborhood, it can be that you get ruffle stomped by 5 or 6 ships that just pile dive on you from all sides. It could also be that your own allies in the AI decide to help out with combat. So this depends on your relationship with these various captains of these starships. So let's go ahead and dive into gameplay for the combat, and I'll show you what is going on there. So combat in SPAZ 2 starts by a loading icon where other enemies can join in on the fray. Once you load in, your ship starts in a different view than you're used to if you're playing SPAZ 1. It doesn't start in a top-down view, but it starts in a backwards third-person angle view, as if you're playing a shooter game or a third-person action game. Now, each ship has a couple of modules, and I'm attacking a space station right now. Flying around me are my strike aircraft. These are expendable units that get thrown in and they sort of die, and you can repair them. If you try to flee combat, then you lose them permanently. You can turn off damage numbers, which I've enabled now to showcase what is going on, but each module of a unit can be separately targeted and destroyed. This is actually vitally important because if you're facing a ship that has a lot of engines, you might want to take out those engines to prevent it from escaping. If you're facing a ship that has a very good anti-shield battery and your ship is designed around shielding, you might want to target that shield battery first to make sure that your shields aren't going to get drained. And the same goes for a variety of other things. Now, there's 3 stages to destroy something. 1, you destroy its shield. 2nd, you get into its hull, which means you then start eating into its health. Based on the way the ships are built and the way stations are built, you first have to go through modules to get into the center module, which is your mothership core, which you can then attack and destroy. So depending on how the ship is built, it could be quite hard and you may have to go through several layers of modules to do that, or it could be quite easy and you can just destroy one module attached to it and with proper aiming destroy the mothership core in one go. This is all up to you and how the enemy ship is built. Once you complete a combat mission, the zone is clear. You can fly around in it if you want. There's nothing preventing you from doing that. And once you do that, you can either pick up stuff. Sometimes there's something to pick up, more often there isn't, and you can just go back to star map should you so desire. Important thing to note with SPAZ 2 as opposed to SPAZ 1 is not top down, and everything else in the combat form feels more or less the same. There is more depth to the combat here than in SPAZ 1 in my opinion, but that depth is not yet fully realized, which is something I do hope they add in the period of early access. There's definitely nuance in there, don't get me wrong, it's just not as deep as I would have liked it to be in terms of combat mechanics, positioning mechanics, and interaction mechanics between ships, modules, and especially the terrain, which is pretty interesting. It just doesn't do that much because it's so far spread out. That's really it. And then you can go travel around the map and do a variety of things, such as attack AI, steal resources from your opponent, defend your own borders from border raids, and a bunch of other things. Overall, the game can be split up in two parts. One part is the star map. It's a political landscape of relations, AI opponents, terrain conquering, star-based expansion, and everything like that. In the late game, when the zombies appear, there's also that you have to keep track of and make sure that everything goes well and okay. This is a game in and of itself. And in some ways, this overmap, this star-based map, can be considered a 4X. A very light one, but it could be considered one. It's not though, because where SPAZ shines out is the combat which I just showed you. And that is the core of the game. Everything else is just fluff to fill out the extras. Your goal is to build a cool ship and fight others in it. Now the game's multiplayer component will mostly be the ship combat. You versus a player, you just smash against each other and that's really it. It's not implemented yet, and that will come, but that is what the combat will be. This overmap is really for your own enjoyment in building star bases, expanding ships, building multiple ideas, having relations, and dominating the map with your vessels. Pretty straightforward. You can kill opponents, kill captains, loot their ships, force them to surrender if you're strong enough. There are a few things though that I feel are missing in the game right now. Now I'm not sure they will be added later on, but I do hope they will. One of the things I am very confused with, I still don't know what some of these icons mean. Obviously the plus means health and the lightning bolt means shield, but what does the hammer mean? What does the capacitor mean? What does 280 mean? Now there is an icon where you can show icon legend and it will show you all the icons, but it doesn't help you compare it as well. It doesn't really tell me anything. And that is a bit of a shame. So I do hope that they improve on the tooltipping and information provisions to the players during early access. Another thing that I feel is missing right now is that when you are building your ship, you can fire your guns in whatever direction you want, and you can see that. This also goes for guns that don't actually require active targeting. You can't fire your missiles or your engine or anything like that, and that is a shame. I would have liked to see a way to sort of test drive your ship before going out with it to see if a certain configuration even works, if there's not a glaring flaw in it somewhere. Right now you have to build your ship, then go fly out, find a target, even if it's a weak target. You just fly out, find a target, fight there, and then fly back if you feel the ship has a flaw you did not anticipate. So I do hope they improve on that. Now there is an arena combat mode, and if you go to the arena, you'll see that each arena combat has a few levels. Now you get these for XP, you get some scrap, you improve your relationship with the faction in place. All pretty useful, especially in the early game where you're just getting started and you need a little bit of scrap and everybody's stronger. Later down the line, you're going to get quite a bit of scrap, so it's still good to do them, but not as important. Problem I have here is that these ships are pre-configured, and it's sort of a game in a game idea where you are playing a virtual captain, flying a virtual spaceship. The problem I have with this though is, quite simply, I just don't know what this ship is made of. I do not know which modules are on here. Are these missiles? Are these turret guns? Are these flag guns? Are these... I just don't know until I start using it. Yes, it does damage, but is it doing damage to the hull? Is it doing damage to the shield? Is it doing something else entirely? I simply don't know. And that is a bit of a shame. Same goes for most things you're buying in the game. So this is not a arena things per se. This is a game overall. And that's what I think currently the game has the biggest flaw with. There just isn't a lot the game provides information with, and that is a shame. Now when in combat, the game has a few combat modes. As I said, you can do the automated combat where the game decides where you should fire, and you can override that by just pressing the left mouse button and firing whatever you want. This is first mode, and you can just press 1 and it will go on that mode. That's the mode in the bottom left. You can switch to manual mode, just turrets, just missiles, etc. These are the things you can configure in the options menu, should you so desire to do so, and just configure which guns you feel belong there. Once combat is done, sometimes you can pick up stuff in the map, sometimes you can't. You just go head over to the star map, load up a screen, and that is really it. Now if this was real combat, I'd get a screen with loot, and I could pick what loot I wanted, like scrap or res or parts I stole from the combat ship. But because this was an arena, I don't get that. I just get a little bit of scrap for winning the combat. And you could see that my crew is now below 160, which is the requirement for my ship, and I should probably stock up on that, because if I'm in a situation where I take damage or I have to recharge something or whatever maintenance is required for the ship to fly, this costs crew, and if I don't have enough crew, my ship will break down and I might as well start again. Now, if you die, your ship gets destroyed, you can start from scratch by either restarting the game or start in one of your bases with a fresh ship. Now, this doesn't mean the ship is good. No, it's a ship built with scrap parts, which is the shittiest ship there is. These parts are the weakest of all parts, and if your ship is built only out of scrap parts, it has a challenge rating of 5. Right now you can see mine is 24, and later down the line you'll have ships with 60, 70 or 80 challenge rating once you have unlocked high-end modules, high-end slots and high-end gear. So that is SPAZ in a nutshell. They've taken the idea of SPAZ 1, that was top-down combat with modular ships, and really expanded on it. Now there's a few more things you can do in SPAZ that are pretty cool. Obviously you have a variety of modes to move. Moving faster means burning more res, so you have to sort of decide for yourself if you want to move slower, conserve res. If you want to move faster, burn res, but moving faster might mean you escape an enemy that's chasing you, or it might mean you get to a resource node before an opponent does or before an AI does, and are able to take that resource for yourself. So this is a consideration you can make. And obviously, because the game always has a pause, and it's always paused unless you're actively saying something, you can decide this for yourself without any rush to do so. Lastly, you have your inventory, which has all your parts. This is the same inventory you see when you're trading. Nothing really weird here, except, like I said earlier, there just isn't enough information on your ship regarding what you're actually looking at. There is some information, don't get me wrong, it's not completely blind, but the information isn't as concise and precise as I would like to have it, especially if I'm building a ship blindly, basically. This goes for configurations of various vessels, this goes for configurations of various things. Like, for example, I was not aware that ramming can only be done with the front of your ship, which is the nose, and the other part of your ship that tries to ram something by either bumping into it sideways won't actually help anything. Only the front ram will actually do damage. This means a stronger front sight, if you're building a ramming ship, is actually really important. So you have to build maybe 2 nose modules next to each other to provide that extra damage. Also, speed is a requirement, so you might need to build multiple engines in the back to do that. So the game doesn't really tell you these things, and you just sort of have to figure them out yourself. So I do hope that in early access they really flesh out the information in the game. So in conclusion, what do I think of SPAZ 2? If you liked SPAZ 1, you will absolutely love SPAZ 2. If you hated SPAZ 1, SPAZ 2 will not change your mind. If you've never heard of SPAZ, well, this is your introduction. It's a modular ship building ship fighting space game where you are a captain and you sort of have to build your own ship built out of a variety of modules with a wide range of weapons going from machine guns, missiles, drones, flying, deft rays. There is a ton of stuff you can mix and match and build your ship from. Like I said, from ships that are designed for ramming, to ships that are high speed, high turn, to ships that are a long line and just a big gun battery that is mostly stationary and slow. You decide what kind of ships you want to build, what kind of modules you want to build them with, and even the way they look and feel with these modules. Overall, SPAZ 2 has set out to do one thing: build on the ideas of SPAZ 1. And it has done so magnificently. Now, is the game finished? Is the game worth your money right now in early access? And the answer to that is surprisingly yes. But there is one caveat here I do want to add, is that if you think of playing the multiplayer, and if you're considering the game for maybe Linux or something like that, don't buy the game just yet. Don't buy the game for its promise of VR. Don't do that. Buy the game if you enjoy modular shipbuilding and sandbox combat coupled with that. That is the consideration whether or not you should purchase this title in early access. If you want to play the multiplayer, wait until the multiplayer is implemented. In fact, and this is kudos to the developers, they actually say this in their early access little blub on Steam: if you want the multiplayer, please wait until we have implemented it. And I'm echoing that statement. Don't buy a game for features it doesn't yet have. Buy it for what it does. And what it has is a very fleshed out campaign and sandbox mode, a very cool, if a bit obtuse, ship building mode, and very cool, interesting combat with way more depth than apparent on the first look. So, Space Pirates and Zombies 2 is coming out on Steam on May 17th in early access. It's projected to stay in early access right about a year, and it's coming out for $20 or your regional equivalent. If you want to check it out, go right over there. It is pretty damn good. It does have its drawbacks, and it definitely has a bunch of development work left on it, so do take that into consideration. So thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press the like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that reason. And leave a comment. Tell us what you liked, Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what we can do better. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button below and we will deliver. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, right here on Galactic.